Days passed, and life on Earth slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. The sky no longer glowed with strange silver light, and no one in town spoke about the mysterious nights anymore. To everyone else, it was as if nothing had happened. But for Eli Moran, everything had changed forever. His observatory, once filled only with the hum of machines and the rustle of paper, now felt different, warmer somehow, as if the walls still remembered the soft laughter of the two small beings who had lived there. Their drawings still hung by the window, and their faint fingerprints shimmered slightly on the glass whenever sunlight touched them. Every night, Eli still looked up at the stars, searching the skies for a sign. He didn't expect to see their ship again. He knew they were far away, safe in their mother's arms, but a part of him couldn't help hoping. Sometimes he thought he saw flickers of light moving slowly across the horizon, and his heart would leap before he reminded himself it could just be a satellite or a plane. Still, hope stayed quietly in his chest, like a small flame that refused to go out. He kept himself busy with his work. He spent hours studying the stars just as he always had, but now they felt less like distant cold points of light. They felt alive. They had faces and stories and love behind them. The universe no longer seemed empty. It felt like a place full of quiet connections waiting to be discovered. One night, a month after the Queen and her daughters had left, Eli sat alone by his telescope. The sky was unusually clear. Every star sparkled as if the heavens had been polished just for that night. He leaned back in his chair, sipping tea, thinking about how much his life had changed. He missed the gentle sounds they used to make, the way their laughter filled the room. He even missed the strange glow that used to dance along the walls when they played. "I hope you're home," he whispered softly to the night. "And I hope you remember me." Just as he said those words, something unusual happened. The air inside the observatory grew still. A soft humming sound began to fill the room, the same gentle tone he had heard the night they arrived. He looked around, heart pounding, not in fear, but in wonder. The telescope lenses shimmered, and the faint glow spread across the floor. Eli stood, barely breathing. "Is that you?" he asked quietly. In the middle of the room, a tiny point of light appeared, floating in the air like a star come down from the sky. It pulsed softly, growing brighter with each beat. Then it drifted toward his desk and settled gently beside his journal. When the light faded, something small and beautiful remained, a crystal no larger than a bird's egg, glowing faintly from within. Its light was the same soft silver he remembered from the princess's skin. Eli picked it up carefully. The moment his fingers touched it, warmth spread through his hand and into his chest. The glow brightened, and suddenly he saw a vision. It wasn't frightening, it was gentle and full of feeling. He saw Queen Zalara standing on a balcony under twin suns, her daughters beside her. The little ones waved and smiled, their eyes shining. The Queen placed her hand over her heart, and in his mind Eli heard her voice. "Thank you, Eli Moran of Earth. The universe remembers kindness." The image faded, leaving only the soft warmth of the crystal in his hand. Eli sat for a long time, unable to speak. His heart felt full, and for the first time in weeks, tears slid down his cheeks. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. He placed the glowing crystal in a small glass case and set it by the window where moonlight could reach it. Every night afterward, it glowed softly as if it were alive, pulsing in a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Sometimes, on very quiet nights, Eli thought he could hear faint laughter in the air, like two children playing far away, but still close enough for their joy to reach him. Years passed, and Eli continued his work as an astronomer. He became well known for his discoveries about distant star systems and strange energy patterns. He never told anyone about his visitors, not because he feared being believed or not believed, but because he wanted to keep that memory sacred. It was a story too special, too delicate to explain with words. It was something the heart understood better than the mind. The crystal remained with him always. Its glow never faded. Whenever he looked at it, he remembered the quiet nights, the soft lights, and the feeling of being part of something far greater than himself. One evening, many years later, as Eli grew older, he sat by his window and watched the stars just as he always had. The crystal on his desk pulsed softly beside him. The night sky seemed unusually bright, filled with shimmering light. He smiled, remembering that long-ago night when two small visitors had curled up on his chest, bringing warmth and wonder into his lonely world. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I kept you safe." As he spoke, a faint beam of silver light swept across the sky, just for a second, but long enough for him to notice. He chuckled softly, knowing it wasn't his imagination. Somewhere, out there across galaxies, Queen Zalara and her daughters had remembered him too. That night when Eli finally closed his eyes, peace filled his heart. He knew that love, once shared, never truly disappears. It travels through space, through time, and even across worlds. It lives in every star, every ray of light, and every kind act done by one soul for another. And in the endless sky above, two small silver lights glided quietly side by side before vanishing among the stars. In a quiet observatory on a small blue planet, the soft glow of a crystal shone gently through the window, its rhythm calm, steady, and full of life. It was not just a memory. It was a reminder that the universe, vast and mysterious as it may be, always finds a way to bring hearts together, no matter how far apart they are. For days, strange things began happening all around the quiet little town where Eli lived. People noticed lights in the sky that didn't move like airplanes or stars. Some said they saw silver clouds glowing at midnight. Others heard a low humming sound like music carried by the wind. But no one knew what it meant. Eli, however, had a feeling deep inside his heart. He could sense that something or someone was coming. Each night he stood outside his observatory, looking up at the stars while Lumea and Vera watched from the window. Their eyes were full of light and hope. They didn't need words to tell him. He could feel it. The one they missed the most was near. Then one evening the air around the observatory shimmered like a soft wave. The trees swayed even though there was no wind. The ground vibrated gently beneath Eli's feet. He looked up and saw the clouds splitting apart, glowing from within. A large shape appeared high above, smooth, bright, and silent. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. A soft beam of silver light touched the ground beside the observatory. Eli shielded his eyes as the light grew stronger. When it faded, a group of tall, graceful figures stood before him. Their skin glowed faintly, and their eyes held the same golden light he had seen in his visions. They didn't look threatening. Instead, there was a calmness in the air, like they carried peace with them. At the center of the group stood a tall woman wearing a crown that shimmered like morning dew. Her presence filled the air with quiet power. Even though Eli had never met her before, he knew who she was immediately. The same golden eyes, the same calm strength. She was the woman from his visions, Queen Zalara. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The queen stepped forward slowly, her gaze scanning the surroundings until her eyes met his. Eli felt her thoughts touch his mind like a gentle whisper. "You are the human who found them." He nodded silently. He could barely breathe. "They're safe," he said softly. "They've been with me." Behind him, the door opened. Luma and Vera stepped outside, their small forms glowing softly in the moonlight. When they saw their mother, their faces lit up. The queen's calm expression finally broke as tears filled her eyes. She took a step forward, then another, until she was kneeling before them. The two little princesses ran into her arms, wrapping themselves around her as if afraid she might disappear. Eli stood back, his heart full. He didn't need to understand their words. The sight said everything. The queen held her daughters close, whispering in their language, her voice trembling with love and relief. For a few long minutes, it felt like the stars themselves were watching this reunion. When the queen finally looked up at Eli, her expression had softened. "You cared for them," she said, not with her mouth but through the same gentle telepathic voice that reached his thoughts. "You protected them when I could not." Eli shook his head. "They protected me," he replied quietly. "They brought peace into my life. I just did what anyone would do." The queen looked at him for a long moment, her golden eyes warm but full of depth. "Not everyone would show kindness to what they cannot understand," she said. "Your heart guided you." Eli smiled slightly, unsure what to say. He had never been good with big words, but his heart felt heavy at the thought of them leaving. "They've become part of my world," he whispered. The queen seemed to sense his feelings. She reached out a hand, and for a moment, a soft glow surrounded him. He saw flashes of her memories, her endless search through galaxies, her sleepless nights, her hope that refused to fade. He understood her love and her pain, and she, in turn, saw his quiet life, his loneliness, and how the two little girls had filled that empty space. After a long silence, she said gently, "Your kindness will never be forgotten, Eli Moran of Earth." The air shimmered again as her royal attendants approached, preparing to return to their ship. The queen turned back to her daughters, brushing her fingers over their glowing hair. The girls looked torn between joy and sadness. They clung to her hands but glanced at Eli, their eyes filled with emotion. Eli knelt down to their level. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're going home now. Your mother's here." Lumea stepped forward and placed her small hand on his cheek. For a brief second, he saw an image in his mind, himself looking up at the stars, smiling, and the two girls waving goodbye from a ship bathed in light. When the image faded, he found a single tear on his face. The queen stood tall again, holding her daughters close. A soft hum filled the air as the silver light began to rise around them. Before she left, she turned to Eli one last time. "Your world may be small, but your heart reaches far," she said in that same calm voice. "You have touched another realm." Eli nodded, words stuck in his throat. The light grew brighter, surrounding them all. Then, in a blink, the queen and her daughters lifted into the air, rising slowly toward the ship above. The clouds glowed silver for a moment, and then the sky was quiet again. Eli stood there long after the light faded, the night silent except for the rustle of leaves. The air still carried a faint warmth where they had stood. He looked up at the stars, searching for the ship, but it was gone. All that remained was the soft, endless glow of the universe above him. He walked back inside the observatory. The room felt strangely still but full of memories. Their small blanket still lay on the couch. Their drawings were scattered on his desk, little stars, circles, and smiling faces. Eli sat down, running his hand over the papers, feeling both sadness and peace. That night he wrote in his journal one last time. "Tonight they went home. I hope they are happy. If I ever look up and see a silver light among the stars, I'll know they are watching. I don't know why the universe chose me to be part of their story, but I'm grateful." When he finished writing, he looked once more at the sky. The stars twinkled brighter than usual, and for a moment he thought he saw two tiny sparks of silver light dance across the horizon before fading into the night. He smiled. The world was quiet again, but something deep inside him had changed forever. He had seen the impossible, cared for lives from another world, and felt love that crossed galaxies. He didn't feel alone anymore. Days slowly turned into weeks, and Eli's small observatory became a home filled with quiet wonder. The two little beings, whom he now called Lumea and Vera, after the names he kept hearing softly in his mind, were growing stronger every day. Their light had become steadier, and their curiosity about everything around them made Eli smile. He taught them simple things: how to draw shapes on paper, how to listen to music, and how to look through his telescope at the night sky. Though they didn't speak with words, they communicated with gentle feelings like waves of emotion that flowed straight into his heart. When something made them happy, he felt warmth in his chest. When they were scared or tired, he sensed it before they even showed it. Sometimes they would place their hands on his telescope and project soft images into his mind, pictures of their world. He saw fields that glowed under two suns, a sky filled with shimmering birds, and a tall palace made of crystal towers. In one of those visions, he saw a woman with golden eyes standing on a balcony, her expression filled with both strength and sadness. Every time he saw her, the same word echoed faintly in his thoughts: Mother. Eli began to realize the truth. These two little beings weren't random visitors, they were royal children from another planet. Somewhere across the stars, their mother was searching for them. The thought made his heart ache for her. He couldn't imagine the pain of losing not one, but both daughters. He started spending his nights not just watching the stars, but trying to communicate through them. He used radio signals, light pulses, and even sound frequencies, hoping that somehow, somewhere, someone might hear. But no matter what he tried, there was never any response. Still, he refused to give up. Meanwhile, something extraordinary began happening around his observatory. At night, Faint silver patterns appeared on the windows and walls, tiny glowing lines that looked like writing, though Eli couldn't read them. The air sometimes shimmered softly, and the telescope lenses would show strange energy trails across the sky. He knew the girls were connected to it somehow. Perhaps their very presence was sending signals across space without either of them realizing. One evening, as Eli watched the stars with the little ones beside him, they suddenly became still. Their bright eyes turned upward, wide and alert. Eli felt a strong wave of emotion, something between joy and fear, flow through him. He followed their gaze. In the distance, far above Earth's atmosphere, a faint silver light flashed once, then twice, in a clear, steady rhythm. It was almost like a heartbeat. The girl's glow brightened in response, and Eli realized it wasn't random. It was a signal. Someone was calling to them. Thousands of light years away in the skies of Virayon, Queen Zalara stood before her scientists, staring at the same repeating pulse on the Royal Energy Tracker. After many long weeks of silence, they had finally found something, a faint but distinct trace of her daughter's life signatures. The reading was small and unstable, but it was real. It came from a planet far outside known travel routes. Her heart, though outwardly calm, filled with renewed hope. "Locate it precisely," she commanded. Her team worked tirelessly for hours until one of them turned, eyes shining with disbelief. "Your Majesty, the source comes from a planet called Earth." The Queen looked at the star map again. The small blue world seemed so distant, so simple compared to their advanced systems. Yet that was where her daughter's signals had appeared. She closed her eyes briefly, whispering a silent promise. "Hold on, my little ones. I am coming." Back on Earth, Eli continued his attempts to understand what was happening. Every day brought a new discovery. The girls started showing signs of understanding more human behavior. They laughed softly when he told stories, touched the leaves of his plants with wonder, and sometimes stared out the window as if they could see beyond the clouds into the stars themselves. One afternoon, as Eli was preparing food, he noticed the room had grown brighter even though the lights were off. He turned around to see both girls standing together holding hands, their eyes closed. Between them, a faint image shimmered in the air, a hologram-like scene showing a tall woman kneeling, reaching out her arms as if calling to them. The girls smiled softly but looked sad. Eli watched with awe and understanding. "She's calling for you, isn't she?" he said gently. He felt their sadness flow into his chest like a soft echo. He wished he could tell their mother they were safe. That night, he decided to record a message. Using his telescope's radio transmitter, he pointed toward the section of sky where he had first seen the strange lights. "To whoever is listening," he said softly, "I think I have found two small children. They are safe. They are not human, but they are kind and gentle. If you're looking for them, please know I will protect them until you arrive." He didn't know if anyone would ever hear it, but speaking the words made him feel better. Unbeknownst to him, his message and the faint energy from the children had already been detected by Virayon's tracking systems. Queen Zalara ordered her ships to prepare for a long journey across galaxies. The thought of seeing her daughters again filled her with strength. On Earth, Eli went about his days, unaware that his small observatory had become the most important point in the universe for one grieving queen. The nights grew quieter, but the girls seemed restless. They often looked to the sky, glowing faintly as if waiting for something. One late evening, as Eli stepped outside to get fresh air, he noticed something strange again. The stars above seemed to move, forming unfamiliar patterns. A faint humming sound filled the sky, soft at first, then stronger. He looked up and his heart skipped a beat. A long, shining shape was gliding high above the clouds, almost invisible except for the way it reflected moonlight. He stared in awe. "It can't be," he whispered. But deep inside, he knew it could. Inside his house, the girls had begun to glow brightly. They reached for the window, their eyes shining with tears and joy. Eli ran back inside, his breath caught in his throat. "What's happening?" he asked, though part of him already knew. The room filled with soft, pulsing light. The girls turned to him and reached out, their tiny hands pressing against his chest. In that instant, a clear image filled his mind, Queen Zalara's face closer and clearer than ever before. She wasn't just a vision now. She was coming. Eli stood frozen, both amazed and uncertain. He looked out at the stars again and whispered to the sky, "They're here, aren't they?" The wind outside shifted gently as if in answer. Somewhere beyond the clouds, far above Earth's skies, the first royal ships of Virelon entered orbit, searching for the signal that had led them across galaxies. And in that quiet little observatory, the line between worlds had finally begun to blur. Far away from the glowing world of Virelon, on a quiet corner of Earth, there lived a young man named Eli Moran. He was an astronomer who loved the night sky more than anything else. His home sat on a small hill outside a sleepy town, far from the noise of cities. Every night while others slept, Eli sat in his old observatory, gazing through his telescope and taking notes about the stars. To him, the stars were like old friends. He knew their patterns, their colors, and even their tiny movements. But lately, something strange had been happening. For 3 nights in a row, he noticed an odd cluster of lights moving in the sky, not like any satellite or aircraft he had ever seen. They shimmered softly, shifting colors from silver to pale blue and then to gold. Each night, the lights appeared a little closer to Earth. Eli recorded everything in his journal, sketching what he saw. "Unexplained movement," he wrote. "Pattern appears intelligent." He didn't tell anyone, not even his colleagues at the nearby observatory, because he knew how people reacted to such claims. They would laugh or tell him he was seeing things, so he kept it to himself. One evening, as he finished his coffee and prepared for another long night, the power flickered. The lights in his observatory dimmed, then went completely out. He sighed, thinking it was just another outage, but when he stepped outside to check, he noticed the air had changed. It felt charged, almost humming with quiet energy. The sky glowed faintly, even though there was no moon. Then he saw them, the same strange lights he had been tracking for days, but now much brighter and closer. They floated silently above the treetops, weaving slowly as if searching for something. Eli's heart raced, but not from fear. He felt an odd sense of peace, like the air itself was calming him. The lights began to swirl faster and faster until suddenly they flashed and vanished. The night turned still again. Thinking it might have been a dream, Eli went back inside. He double-checked his instruments, but all the readings were blank. Everything seemed normal. Feeling tired, he decided to rest for a while. He lay down on his small couch near the telescope and drifted into sleep. Hours later, he woke with a start. Something felt different. There was warmth against his chest, a soft rhythmic sound, almost like breathing. At first, he thought his cat had snuck in, but when he looked down, his breath caught. Resting on his chest were 2 tiny figures, shimmering faintly in the dim light of dawn. They were no bigger than infants, yet they didn't look human. Their skin had a gentle silver glow. Their eyes were closed, and their small hands clutched the fabric of his shirt. Eli froze. His mind raced with questions, but his heart felt strangely calm. He didn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt connected. Carefully, he sat up, making sure not to disturb them. They didn't wake, but curled closer to him, as if they trusted him completely. He could feel their faint heartbeats, light as whispers. He tried to make sense of what he was seeing. They weren't dolls, he could see them breathing. They weren't holograms, he could feel their warmth. How is this possible? He whispered to himself. He reached out to touch one of their tiny hands, and as soon as his finger brushed their skin, a burst of soft light filled his mind. For a split second, Eli saw images, not with his eyes, but inside his thoughts. A tall, shining palace, a woman with golden eyes, 2 laughing children playing under twin suns, then a sudden flash of sadness and fear. The vision ended as quickly as it began, leaving Eli breathless. He looked at the 2 small beings again. "You're not from here, are you?" he said softly. Of course they couldn't answer, but somehow, he already knew the truth. They had come from the stars. Over the next few hours, Eli did everything he could to keep them comfortable. He placed a soft blanket around them and gently moved them to a makeshift cradle made from a basket and towels. When they stirred, they didn't cry. They just looked around silently, their large silver eyes full of curiosity. When he spoke, they tilted their heads as if they understood. Eli began writing everything down in his notebook. Their size, their glow, their strange calmness. He felt like he was living inside one of the stories he used to read as a child. But deep inside, he knew this was something real, something far beyond human understanding. The days that followed were filled with wonder and quiet amazement. The 2 little beings grew stronger, though they still seemed fragile. Eli noticed they responded to emotions more than words. When he felt happy or calm, they would glow softly and smile. When he felt anxious, their light dimmed. It was as if they could feel what he felt, share his emotions through some invisible link. At night, when the world outside was silent, they sometimes reached out their tiny hands and touched his face, filling his mind with faint images, glimpses of stars, bright fields of silver grass, and a tall woman calling their names in a language he couldn't understand. Every time he saw her face, he felt her pain and longing. He didn't know who she was, but he sensed she was searching for them. Eli decided not to tell anyone. He feared people would try to take the little ones away to study them, to lock them in labs and treat them like experiments. He couldn't let that happen. They were innocent and gentle, like lost children who had found safety in the most unexpected place, his small, quiet home. One night, as he was writing by the dim glow of his desk lamp, he noticed the two beings watching him. Their eyes shone with soft light, and then, for the first time, he heard a sound not through his ears but inside his thoughts. A single word, soft and musical, echoing in his mind. Eli. He froze, staring at them. "You can understand me," he whispered. The smaller one reached out a hand, touching his wrist, and another image flashed in his mind. Two worlds, one of light and one of blue skies. He understood then. They were far from home, lost between worlds, and somehow had found him. Eli didn't know how or why they had come to Earth, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to protect them. Whatever force had brought them here, it was powerful. And somewhere out there, someone must be searching desperately for them. He looked out the window toward the stars that night, the same stars that had always felt distant and cold. But now they seemed alive, watching, waiting. Somewhere beyond them, he imagined a mother looking up at the same sky, wishing for her daughter's return. Eli gently whispered, "Don't worry, I'll keep them safe." Outside, the stars twinkled softly as if they heard his promise. The great planet of Virelon shone like a silver pearl in the middle of the endless stars. It was a world of shimmering skies, glowing forests, and rivers that sparkled with light even at night. At the heart of this beautiful planet stood the royal city of Athera, built from crystal towers that caught the sunlight and scattered it into rainbows across the sky. In the tallest of those towers lived Queen Zalara, the ruler of all Virelon, a being both admired and feared across the galaxy. Queen Zalara was known not only for her power, but also for her wisdom. Her eyes glowed a soft golden hue, and her voice carried calm strength. She had ruled her people with fairness for many years, guiding them through times of peace and storm alike. But beneath her strong and regal nature, she was also a mother, one who loved her daughters more deeply than she ever showed in public. Her two young daughters, Princess Vera and Princess Lumea, were her light. They were small, curious, and full of laughter. Their bright silver skin reflected the soft glow of Virelon's twin moons, and their innocent questions often made the great queen smile when no one was watching. One morning, as the twin suns began to rise over the horizon, the palace came alive with its usual quiet rhythm. Servants glided silently through the halls, caretakers tended to the gardens, and guards took their positions around the royal nursery where the princesses slept. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But when the chief caretaker, an elderly woman named Mara, went to wake the young princesses, she found their beds empty. The soft blankets were neatly folded, as if the children had simply vanished into thin air. At first, Mara thought they might have wandered into the playroom or the balcony garden, as they sometimes did. But when she checked every corner of the royal chambers, the truth slowly settled in. Princess Vera and Princess Lumea were gone. Her hands began to tremble. She called out for them softly, hoping to hear their tiny voices echoing back, but there was only silence. The air itself felt heavy, almost still, as if the palace was holding its breath. Within minutes, the entire royal staff was searching. The guards locked every gate, and the palace's scanners swept through the city and surrounding fields. Flyers were sent out into the skies, and every communication line on Virelon was filled with one urgent message. The royal princesses had disappeared. When Queen Zalara was informed, she stood in silence for several long seconds. The court around her waited, frightened of her reaction. Her golden eyes dimmed, and she spoke only 3 words: "Find my daughters." Her voice was calm, but everyone in the room could feel the storm of emotion hidden beneath it. The Queen's advisors began organizing a planet-wide search. Scientists worked through the night to trace any unusual energy patterns that could show where the children had gone. They searched through the forests under the crystal lakes and even beyond the planet's surface. Nothing. No sign of movement. No strange energy readings. Only silence and confusion. It was as if the princesses had vanished into another world. Days turned into weeks. Hope began to fade. Rumors spread through Virelon like whispers in the wind. Some said the young princesses had been taken by traders from distant stars. Others believed they had wandered into a hidden portal, a rare natural phenomenon that sometimes opened between worlds. But Queen Zalara refused to give up. Every night she stood on the balcony of her tower, looking out at the stars, calling softly to her daughters in the secret telepathic language known only to her family. She felt nothing in return but a faint echo of emptiness. Despite her heartbreak, she never let her people see her pain. To them, she remained the same fierce and steady ruler they had always known. But those closest to her could see the small signs, the way she would pause before speaking, the way her hands sometimes tightened when she looked at the empty nursery. Her daughters had been her joy, and without them even the grand palace felt hollow. Then something strange began to happen. Late at night, when the moons rose high, the royal sensors detected small bursts of unknown energy far beyond their galaxy. At first, the scientists ignored it, thinking it was a natural disturbance. But the pattern of the energy was too familiar. It matched the life signature of the missing princesses. The readings were weak, distant, and scattered, as if they came from a world far, far away. When the scientists presented their findings to the queen, her eyes filled with a rare light. Hope. "Where?" she asked. The chief scientist hesitated before answering. "We believe the signal comes from a small blue planet on the outer edge of the Milky Way." Queen Zalara had never heard of it before. She turned toward the great star map that floated in the center of her chamber. The planet was tiny, barely visible among the glittering galaxies. "What is it called?" she asked quietly. "Earth," the scientist replied. For a long moment the queen said nothing. She simply gazed at the small glowing point in the endless blackness of space. Her daughters were somewhere out there, alive, perhaps frightened, and very far from home. That night, as she walked through the silent halls of her palace, she paused by the nursery door. The room remained untouched since the day her daughters vanished. Their favorite toys were still scattered on the floor. The beds were neatly made, the air soft with the scent of moon blossoms they loved. She placed her hand on one of the small pillows and closed her eyes. "I will find you," she whispered, "no matter how far." Outside the palace, the winds of Virelon carried her promise into the stars. Across galaxies, unseen by any eyes but the heavens, two faint sparks of silver light drifted gently through the night sky, heading toward a quiet blue planet where an ordinary human would soon wake to a mystery that would change everything.